So thank you everyone for being here today. It is late February 2022, and this is a climate advocate training. My name is Kathy Orlando, and I've been with Citizens Climate Lobby since 2010, and I currently work as the International Outreach Manager, the International Director of Programs, as well as Canadian Director. Our solution to democracy, to climate change is democracy, and thank you for being on our team. If you want to introduce yourself in the chat by acknowledging the lands upon which you are coming in, that would be great. We got Treaty 7 here, Treaty 4, Robinson Huron Treaty. Oh, yes, and thank you, Miko, for reminding us about what's happening in the Ukraine. So, a lot of Ukrainian people in Canada. I think we have, outside of Russia, the highest number of people of Ukrainian descent outside of Ukraine. So this is really impacting us, and bless you and thank you for reminding us that we don't do this work in a vacuum. So thank you for being here today. I hope by the end of this, you will absorb a little bit of our history and culture, including our unique niche in the environmental movement, our one and only rule, our values, and our 5 levers of political will. You'll be able to articulate the benefits of carbon pricing and border carbon adjustments. And probably the last 25 minutes, we'll be focusing a lot on how to be an effective citizen lobbyist. So you are part of a huge network of volunteers with 145 active chapters outside the USA. And after today, I think there will be 42 of them in Canada. So way to go, Regina, for joining us. This is so exciting. And this is, because I'm only going to do this in an hour, I'm just going to whip through these slides, but there you can see what you belong to, and you can go back and look for yourself. Our founder was Marshall Saunders. I got to meet him in 2010, and I wish you all could have met him. He passed away in 2019, and he was in December of that year, and he was a remarkable human being with the most generous heart I've possibly ever met. And he realized that ordinary people like me and you, in this climate crisis, we're going to have to organize, educate ourselves, give up our hopelessness, and gain the skills necessary to be effective with our governments. So our mission at Citizens Climate Lobby is to build the political will for a livable world. And we do that by empowering people to have breakthroughs in their personal and political power. Never underestimate the power of the individual. And specifically, I like to focus in on our niche here in Canada. Really important to acknowledge that there's this beautiful environmental movement in Canada with hundreds of environmental groups, and each one of us occupies very important niches. And here at Citizen Climate Lobby, our niche is to train and support volunteers organized by ridings or constituencies to lobby parliamentarians and build political will for improvements to the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act. And we've been meeting monthly and providing our volunteers with actions every single month since September 2010. We have one rule, and it's why we're known as the Nice Climate Group on Parliament Hill, literally, because I heard a parliamentarian say that. We have respect, admiration, and gratitude for service of our politicians and each other. As I read these values and talk about them a little bit, I want you to think about which one of our core values at Citizens Climate Lobby speaks to you, and perhaps write it in the chat. So we focus on carbon pricing. And we focus on that because we think it's not the only thing that needs to be done to get out of the climate crisis, but it's one of the keystone policies to help get us out of the climate crisis. We focus on supporting volunteers to lobby for very specific improvements to the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act. We do that. We are focused because we literally have hundreds of volunteers across Canada. And if we changed what we lobbied for on a whim, we drive them crazy. So you signed up to do this, people sign up to do this work and figure out how to move the carbon pricing needle or the carbon pricing policies along. But we have integrity. We are open to other ideas. We support other evidence-based and socially just policies that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We support that by signing letters, by getting people to speak on our calls. If you look through our conferences, we're more than carbon pricing. We do see the big picture. And we also do our research and we're on time, but we are focused on supporting volunteers to lobby their politicians for carbon pricing as a means to an end. We don't have to have that carbon pricing policy, whatever gets us to a livable world. We are optimistic. We are ruthlessly optimistic. We are, and because there's only a small number of sociopaths and others that we have to get out of the way. We believe most human beings are really, at their core, love their fellow human beings and want the best for everyone. We embrace diversity. It's truly important to us to listen to all sides and be welcoming to everyone. Personal power is the energy that drives us. It's truly how we move things along, is individuals speaking truth to power, speaking truth to their community that is really helping move things along. Relationships are at the very core of what we do. We're not a one protest group. We're willing to go bring information to our governments again and again and again, and over 1,400 times now about just through lobbying and building relationships with our own MPs. And we are truly nonpartisan. So these are our values, focusing on, focused, but seeing the bigger picture, having integrity, optimistic, embracing diversity, personal power, relationships, and being nonpartisan. So is it anyone sharing which ones? Relationships, diversity and optimism. Does at this point, does anyone want to say it out loud why one of these values speaks to them? Just jump right in, or we can move along. We only have time for one person. Anyone? Okay, got a quiet bunch today. It's okay. You'll be speaking at the end, whether you like it or not. Actually, it gets really scary near the end, but I was trying to warm you up. Gonna get you totally out of your comfort zone. That's okay. So I'm gonna keep moving, and that's great. Now, this is a total info bomb. You don't have to memorize it, but I think you know most of this. Before 2015, Canada's greenhouse gas emissions would have risen if it were not for the actions of the provinces. We were having a terrible time getting our federal government to create policies that were going to cut emissions. It was difficult. And one of the reasons why is because unlike other countries like New Zealand and the UK and Germany, we didn't have climate accountability laws requiring our government to act on the climate crisis. So that was one of the problems. But anyways, in 2015, Trudeau and the Liberals formed government. And one of the best things they did was form the Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate Change, which allowed Canadians like you and I, civil society groups, businesses, industry, to all give feedback, as well as the provinces, to continuously give specific feedback to the Canadian government about what we wanted to see in our climate policies. So for 2 years, they negotiated with the people of Canada at the various levels. And then they announced the federal policy for carbon pricing was announced in 2018. And it looked an awful lot like the carbon pricing policy we've been lobbying for. And not totally, but we were told by a senator and at least 3 MPs, we were the reason they chose that policy. All of our lobbying, which is really cool. And then we got our dividends. For those of us who live in Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, we started receiving dividends in our income tax. And in 2019, April of that year, fees began. And then there was an election in October 19, and the pundits said carbon pricing won. So no political party because we got a minority government. But 2/3 of Canadians voted for parties with carbon pricing. And then in December of 2020, the government actually, because most Canadians still don't know they get the money back. In fact, for the record, my daughter's math teacher was complaining about taxes, including carbon taxes, and said she gets less money back than what she pays. She doesn't believe it. She's not done her own research and she's a math teacher, but that's probably not true. But anyways, so unless she's got a big truck and is driving like from here to Kingdom Come all the time, I don't know. Anyway, so most people don't know they get more money back than what they pay. And that's here in Ontario, that's about 2/3 of, that's like the majority of people. So, and we're going to get checks starting in July. And then the carbon pricing policy survived the Supreme Court challenge in March 2021. And then we finally got climate accountability laws. We lobbied for that. And so did a lot of other groups in Canada. And then carbon pricing survived another election. So I know that's a bit of an info bomb. Just let it absorb. You don't have to memorize it. I put the slides in the chat if you ever want to refer back to it. But I think you know most of it. And it's good to know our history to know what to do going forward. So there are 3 ways to price carbon pollution, because we have to make the polluters pay. That's like a basic principle of economics. There's cap and trade, and that's Quebec has its own system and Nova Scotia has its own system. A carbon tax, that means the government puts a tax on carbon pollution and takes the money and does things with that money. It goes into the general coffers. That's what PEI, New Brunswick, BC, and the territories have now. To be fair, BC, a lot of the money does go back to the people, but not all of it. So to be fair. And it's, and lastly, there's what we've been advocating for, which is basically the principle behind Canada's Federal Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act of 2019. We're beginning to call it climate income, and it's also known as carbon fee and dividend. And the federal policy, if you want to look it up, is called the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act. You'll also hear it called the backstop policy as well. And currently it applies to Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario. So what is it? The government has put an incrementally rising price on carbon pollution, gives almost all the money back to the people equitably, and not based on income nor carbon footprint. And a true climate income policy would include border carbon adjustments as well. And what border carbon adjustments are is when a product that has a high carbon intensity like steel or cement or something like that crosses our border, or even food systems, if it doesn't have a carbon price on it, then the government charges a border tariff on it as it's crossing the border. And this helps domestic industries stay competitive, but it also encourages other countries to price pollution because they would rather collect that money. So Canada is studying border carbon adjustments, but we don't have them. So just again, as a review, incrementally rising price on carbon pollution. Here in Canada, almost all the money, 90% of the money goes back to Canadians, regardless of income or carbon footprint, although rural people get 10% more. Additionally, there's a small portion. So 90% of the money goes back to Canadians. You don't have to memorize this. 10% goes to the municipalities, universities, schools, and hospitals. And that's called the mush industries. And Canada is studying border carbon adjustments. I'm going to stop in a minute. Don't worry, you'll be able to ask questions. And this is the backstop. So I want you to focus here where it says fuel consumption and heating fuel. This is what households pay. This is what small businesses pay. And this is what industries under 10,000 tons per year of carbon pollution pay. And industries between 10,000 and 50,000 tons can opt out of this system and go into this, which I will discuss in a moment. So that price on pollution is at the source. You do not see it on your bill. It's actually absorbed into the cost of everything. Okay, so that's one component of it. And most of, like, all citizens are paying this, and most businesses. Just a small proportion of industry, like cement, like steel, like the chemical industries. I think there's 11 of them in total, including the oil and gas industry, register are what are called output-based pricing systems, facilities, and they have to meet a certain standard. If they go over that standard, they pay a price. If they go under that standard, they get a credit. So it's like cap and trade, but there's no cap. Does that make sense? Okay. And they don't pay the full price. They only pay a portion of that price as well. So they're not paying $10 a ton. They're paying they're not paying right now, that's $40 a ton. They pay a portion of that. And it all depends on what industry they're in. Additionally, there are free allowances, just like in cap and trade. So there's whole parts of the industries that are not in there. Most of what we focus on is this, because this is what citizens care about. But this part here with the output-based pricing system is also something we need to learn. Yeah. So let me just stop for a second. And just for perspective, if we did not have carbon pricing between 2018 and 2022, Environment and Climate Change Canada found that our emissions would probably go up. Now, this is modeling data. We don't have actual data because COVID is interfering with everything. But this is what Environment and Climate Change Canada modeled in 2018. So before I continue, are there any questions about Canada's carbon pricing system before I drill down a little bit more? Did I cover it clearly enough? Okay, here we go. So we're going to drill down a little bit more. So as you can imagine, talking about the details of the policies is not how you sell carbon pricing. Okay, we have to talk about the benefits. I'll come back to that in a moment. It puts money in our pockets, and most of us come out ahead. Okay, most low and income people will come out financially ahead or break even. And we need to keep saying that over and over and over again, because even my child's math teacher doesn't think she's getting more than what she's paying, although I'll show you data shortly. Now, why is this true? Because look at this spit, look at the carbon consumptive habits of the richest 5%. It's huge. And there's similar data for Canada. Okay, this is globally. I don't have that data. And an article published in Nature found that if all countries adopted a policy like we have as our federal backstop, or the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act, they did their studies. It would make it possible to meet the 2-degree target. But because it reduces inequality, this will increase well-being and it will alleviate poverty. So Canada has led the way just by automatically giving money back to people. Like, that's a strange thought, think about it. I guess we got it with our GST starting in 1991, but the GST rebate, but this is a whole new thing, just giving money to people. So yeah, people come out ahead, and there's tons of data to show you why and what the outcomes will be. And this is awesome. Here's Canadian data. This rate from our Parliamentary Budget Office showing that most Albertans, Saskatchewan people, Manitobans, Ontarians, and New Brunswick was formerly under this price, do come out ahead. And even the top, 20% and 40% that have to pay this year, they're only paying $200 for the whole year, more than what they're paying in dividends. And the data, if you want it, it's in the slides, but it's Parliamentary Budget Office data. People do come out ahead, according to our own Parliamentary Budget Office. And this is really complex, but I didn't know who was going to be on the call. So basically, it's showing the rebate that you get in 2021 versus 2030, whether you live in Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, if you're an urban family of three versus a rural family of three. And your total rebate between 2019 and 2030. So let's go to Saskatchewan, because this is technically the Saskatchewan call. You're going to get over $23,000 between 2019 and 2030. And if you live in Regina or Saskatoon, if you live rurally, you're going to get almost $26,000. And you can go to the Fair Path Forward calculator and refer your families and friends to that. It's really cool. And all this is in the slides. Okay, so everybody's going to be fine. Nobody's going to be financially destroyed, and we're going to reduce inequity. But we're in a climate crisis. We have to cut emissions too. That's really important. So seriously, climate income is the single most powerful tool we have to get to net zero by 2050. It's not the only tool, but it's the single most powerful tool we have to get to net zero by 2050. So I encourage you to go to simulators. There are many of them. I like On-Roads, and it's a cutting edge simulation model to test climate solutions and generate climate scenarios for the future. And I set up the On-Roads to look at the global impact of removing fossil fuel subsidies globally, subsidizing clean energy globally, maximizing tree growth globally, and maximizing carbon pricing. And I looked at their impacts on the primary sources of energy, air pollution, and global temperatures. And you're like, oh, info bomb. So let's look at the 4 panels here. Okay, this is the global sources of primary energy. This is air pollution. That PM 2.5 is just like the size of the molecule that is hurting our lungs. And this is really important for especially low-income families, because they tend to live closer to where the air quality is really bad due to fossil fuel pollution. This is global temperatures. And then you can, if you love data, you can go and play with all these toggles. And you can actually be trained by On-Roads. And we have a lot of On-Roads ambassadors in our organization. So this is going out to 2100 global temperatures, and we played with the toggles. So we looked at removing all fossil fuel subsidies, just fossil fuel subsidies, no change in temperature. It's the fossil globally. It's immoral that our governments are giving some of these subsidies, because some of them subsidies to industry. And to be fair, there are some subsidies that actually do help low-income families. So we have to be careful which ones we pull away. And we have to be careful how we remove these subsidies. And 100% agree that they should be removed, but know that it's such a small proportion of the amount of money that the fossil fuel industry takes. It actually wouldn't lower global temperatures. Yeah, these are direct subsidies, okay? Like absolutely the direct ones, and how much these industries are getting. We maximize clean energy subsidies. Yep, you get a 0.4 decrease in change over this century. This one's surprising to some people. If you maximize tree growth, you only, by reducing deforestation and planting trees, you only get a 0.2 degree change. If you maximize carbon pricing, you get a whole degree off, according to this simulator. And there's more carbon pricing that you could add to this as well. This we only maximized one piece. But yeah, so obviously carbon pricing is not going to get us all the way there, but nothing comes close to carbon pricing and shaving temperatures off the planet. And this is the Pembina Simulator. NDC is the target that we had originally said we were going to do. This is our old Paris target. This is business as usual. This is the Pan-Canadian framework if we didn't have carbon pricing. And this is Pan-Canadian framework with carbon pricing. So obviously we still need to do more. More policies are needed, and we totally support all those policies. But without carbon pricing, it's like, according to the Pembina Institute simulator, it's really difficult to get there as well. Okay, so this is just Canadian data. This was global data. All right. So that's it. That's it for carbon pricing. So now we're going into last bits about how we run stuff here. But are there any questions on the carbon pricing data? I wanted to show you one more thing. I forgot, because this is my new slides today. Okay, just give you a minute. If we go back to carbon pricing, remember how we said Canada is studying border carbon adjustments? All right. If we have border carbon adjustments, we can more than exceed our previous Paris Agreement targets. And that was found in both at Canadians for Clean Prosperity as well as at the Parliamentary Budget Office. Just wanted to say that briefly. So that's why we keep pushing for it. So, I mean, this is a very complex, obtuse sort of chart, but the bottom line is with border carbon adjustments and all industries paying the full price, we get past our Paris Agreement targets, which is not where we need to go. We need to go way further than that, but certainly like it's a huge jump. So that's why we also keep pushing for border carbon adjustments, and every bit of pollution is priced. Sorry, I did that. But I can see you're nodding and you're doing okay with my info bomb. Go ahead, Rico.
I might have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a total new question, so you're welcome for like everyone feeling very smart as I ask my question. When we're talking about carbon border adjustment, I don't know how to phrase that, but like, is it like a different part than carbon pricing, or is part of carbon pricing generally?
Okay, it is both a different and part of it. So that's probably why.
That's what I'm confused.
Okay. So it's a whole other entity onto itself, because it involves a lot of, negotiations and diplomacy and building alliances with other countries. And in order to get that carbon price high enough to do the work it has to do, we can't do it without border carbon adjustments, because it will really hurt our domestic industries. Border carbon adjustments are part of it, but they're treated separately. So that was a great question. I loved it. Did that answer it?
Yes. No, thank you. Yeah, exactly. I need to untangle all these things in my mind, and it feels necessary, but I'm like, okay, so it's a separate part at the same time, because exactly like theoretically we could do just carbon pricing. That's what I understand, but also in practice it won't work because of how much it could raise the price on our industry here versus like any dude the other side of the frontier that will not have these severe or carbon pricing tax, I guess.
You totally got it.
Okay, I was like, is this more or less this? Okay.
No, it's great. I like how you put it into your own words too. You got it. I could totally hear you got it. That's great. Any other questions? Because we're going to completely shift gears. Go ahead, Dora.
Okay. I just wanted to know if you could give an example of a subsidy that benefits low-income people for me.
Yeah, sure. The diesel subsidies to northern remote communities. They without them, they would pay a horrible price. Like they would pay a much higher price. We're hearing from our Mexican and Nigerian colleagues that the subsidies that are given to reduce fuel costs for the citizens. If they were to remove them, they'd have riots in the streets. I know that's, you know, we have to carefully remove those things. We cannot increase costs for poorer people without having something to replace them. So I'm not saying we need to keep them. We just have to carefully untangle and make sure these people are protected. I don't support them at all. Just we have to carefully untangle. Does that make sense, Dora?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, so now we're going to quickly do how we work. If I can get this to go down. There we go. So if you're a group leader, you're probably going to notice every month you get action sheets with laser talks. And these monthly actions, you should be reading over. If you're not getting them, you need to talk to your group leader. Make sure that you're getting them, because by rowing together, we're really effective. If we're all doing our own things, it makes it really hard, especially considering there's nobody paid to do this. I'm actually taking my lunch hour right now to do this. Okay, so every single month, for like literally since September 2010, have been sending out these action sheets, and they include laser talks. And you go over them, you look at them as a group leader, and then you think about, okay, is this really good for my group? And yeah, we're lobbying in May, so getting ready to lobby in May, I hope would be something your group would be deciding to do at this point. But you don't have to do them. You determine if they're good for your group. You can do what floats your boat for the most part, but this lobbying together part is really important. And then there's also these things called laser talks in there. And we go in and we go to a very specific, we focus in on something, and then we talk about it. So I'm just going to click over to the January action sheets. I'm going to the February now. Okay, so this is what the action sheets look like. And then, so you get like a general outline of what we want you to do and our upcoming calls this month. And then, you know, the actions that we hope you do. You don't have to, except for getting ready to lobby that's really important to us. And then we have these laser talks, okay? And they drill down into something that's happened recently, so we can, you know, talk about it a little bit more. This is a more detailed laser talk than what we usually have. But that's typical for our action sheets. And this is our most common laser talk. Climate income. Place a fee on fossil fuels at the source, mine, well, or port, start at $15 a ton for the CO2 equivalent, and increase per ton equal annually. This is our carbon fee and dividend / climate income laser talk. Return net revenues to households equally, protecting the low and middle class, and border carbon adjustments on imported goods from or exported to countries without an equivalent price on carbon. That's the one we all internalize. That's the laser talk. That's the more simple one. So we have laser talks, and then also actions that we do every month. And there are 4 core activities that our group do. We work on media within those actions, mainstream mostly, because social media is such a disaster now with Putin. Sorry. Okay. And grass tops. I mean, you do some social media. We do just more for curating and messaging, not for believing that, you know, we have the power to, you know, influence mass people on social media, because we just don't have the money. But it's important for getting yourself and your group out there. But mainstream media, mostly working in the newspapers. I think we've had over 4,000 things in the newspapers over the last 12 years. We work with our community leaders. We work also with our communities at the grassroots by tabling and giving presentations. And we work on developing our local group, but we lobby. That's the big thing we do. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. If you want more training on how to get organized within these other realms, with your group, there's a whole other workshop for that. I want to focus on lobbying. The first thing you're doing when you're going to lobby is you're going to research your politician. You look up, you go to their websites, their social media. There's this thing called the Hansard. It's where everything politicians say for public record is recorded. You can go read what your politicians are saying in the House of Commons there. You can sign up to receive alerts of your MP at openparliament.ca. And when you write a summary about your politician, be sure to include the names of the politician staffers and their contact information, because they're the most important people, because they're the gatekeepers, and they should become your friends because they are your friends. They'll help you get to the politicians, and then you do this research and you share it with your team. And that's what people are working on in February and March. And then eventually you have to secure that appointment. I would not try to secure the appointment right now for something in May. It's too early. And between the rallies, what happened on Parliament Hill, and now the war in Ukraine, it's just not a good time to be securing an appointment for May. But ultimately, like in mid-April, we're going to ask you to secure your appointment. And it's really important that you both phone and email. And if you need to, leave a voicemail, but always follow it up with an email. If you're a constituent, be sure to identify yourself. Say, hi, I'm Kathy Orlando. I'm a constituent of MP Lapointe, and I would love to, I'm with Citizens Climate Lobby, and I would love to talk with her about how we can make the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act better. In the March action sheets, there'll be scripts to phone and email your the staffers that you hope to lobby them in May. That's not to secure an appointment, just to start relationship building and giving a heads up. And in April, the action sheets, there'll be scripts for you to secure the appointment. Most importantly, phone and email, and follow the scripts. They follow a formula. You introduce yourself, identify CCL, say something appreciative, and say specifically what you're hoping for. But you'll get that. Just bear in mind, this is lunch hour, so for your own sake, remember you are citizen lobbyists. You're not experts, so don't stress out, okay? You're very powerful as a citizen lobbyist. And just maybe a couple things, like if you think about that, when you recognize that you don't have to be an expert, you're the citizen, you're the constituent, what does that mean when you lobby? How does that make you feel, knowing that you don't have to be the expert? Anybody want to pop in and just share in the chat?
I find it less scary.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I guess that was one of my goals this year to help out. But I'm like, you feel powerless often, I find. Oh, and I just saw Sandra powerful. Yeah, exactly. It makes you feel more powerful and less scared.
Precisely. That's what people say, and that's what it actually does feel like. More powerful. Yeah, I'm gonna keep going because people are on their lunch. And then I wish we had time for this. We're gonna set up some motivational interviewing in April and May. Please do it. It is so powerful. It'll help you talk to your MPs. It'll also help you with your relationships in general. And it's a person-centered interviewing style that elicits behavior change, and it helps you all move forward together, okay? It comes out of the addictions research, but basically these are the 3 steps. You don't just walk up to somebody and start telling them what to do, right? You first have to get permission. So if you're lobbying and you've got that appointment with your MP, then you already have that permission. But if you see your MP in the grocery store, don't start lobbying them in the grocery store. Okay, just be nice to them, and if they bring it up, that's great, you know, but yeah, don't be lobbying all the time. You don't want them to run away from you. Okay, but when you have, or if you really have to tell them something, say, I really need to just share one little thing with you. Is it okay if I do this now? And I'll be sure to follow it up with a phone call, and I don't expect you to remember, sort of thing, because they're just like constantly being info bombed, right? So you've got that permission to start. And then you ask who, what, where, and when questions, and avoid the why questions. So how do you think this would work going through Parliament? Or who should we best contact? Or what do you think about this policy? And when will they be meeting again? And where exactly should we be directing our efforts? You know, avoid why questions, because politicians will like why questions, or can turn into a philosophical answer, and you might not get the answer. You might get a political answer. The whole idea is to get the MP talking. We're not there to tell them what to do. We're there to figure out why they can't do what we hope what they would do. And we're trying to get to common ground. So I just gave you my 10 hours of training in 2 minutes. So, okay. And then these are interim lobbying asks. So in a moment, you're going to be practicing how to ask for them. I'm going to suggest that we all focus on this one. Oops, on this one here. I'm going to put you into 2 rooms, and I want you to come up with questions for a politician about border carbon adjustments using that motivational interviewing. So number 5. Now, obviously there are 6 asks here. If you were to lobby, you wouldn't lobby for all 6 asks. You would focus in on 1 or 2, depending how much time you had, or the interests of the MPs. Or, you know, I'm gonna ask you to focus in on this border carbon adjustments one. And you know, say, you know, we're here to, you know, talk about border carbon adjustments, and we want them to have them implemented by 2025 at the latest. We want this because border carbon adjustments will ensure industries and jobs are protected. What are your thoughts about that? Who do you think we could work with? Where should we be directing our efforts? See where I'm going with this? Just to get you practicing doing this without being overwhelmed by the other asks, okay? So focus in on number 5. Yep, I told you were going to talk. This was the worst part for me ever in the Citizens Climate Lobby training, was pretending I was lobbying. I am not an actress, but you're about to do that. So I know how you feel if you're not comfortable. And okay, so there are many rules in a meeting. So there's going to, and don't worry about all these rules, but just imagine, like, when you're preparing to lobby, go back to this, make sure you know who the lobby lead is, the person who like appreciates the politician for something, somebody who says, how much time do we have? Who takes the notes? Everybody should participate in the discussion. You have the person who's going to do the very specific ask, okay? Like, what do you know, actually talk about border carbon adjustments. And then there might be things you need to deliver, like recent letters to the editor published, or signs from a petition, whatever. And then you have somebody make sure you do follow-up, and a photographer. And if there's enough room, often you have an observer who doesn't do any of the talking and is really paying attention to the body language and the tone in the room, okay? If you have somebody who's really good at that. Like, there's some people who are just amazing observers, and they'll read things that we'll miss if we're all talking. So these are just suggestions. And this is it. You say, thanks for meeting us today. How much time do we have? Okay. And then you do the intros. You know, my name is blah, 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 and appreciate something for the politician. And then the asker says, today we're here to talk about border carbon adjustments. You know, we'd like to have them enacted by 2025. And then a couple of you think of motivational interviewing questions, and make sure somebody asks for the next meeting. When will the next meeting be? And when's the photo? You ready to get uncomfortable? All right, I'm going to stop sharing. You can refer back to these slides. I think that should do it. You can refer back to these slides. Oops. I just got to do it again. to help you. So quickly, I'm going to put you into 2 rooms. Somebody automatically take control and make it happen. Okay, in your 2 rooms. All right, just say, this is a politician we're lobbying. Who wants to be the, you know, do the introductions and the appreciation? How much time do we have? Who wants to be the specific asker? And what motivational interviewing questions do we want to ask? Okay, you got it? Any questions before I put you in breakout rooms? All right, if your mic doesn't work, don't worry about it. You can be the observer, and maybe you can give input in the chat. So wish me luck on these breakout rooms. Do you all have conservative MPs for the most part?
No. I have a green MP.
Oh, you have Elizabeth May. Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to assign you manually and put you with Miko. Maybe you two could focus on an NDP or green or liberal, and maybe the others can do conservatives. So I'm going to just go there and assign. I know Sandra, Calgary, Landon, Megan, and then and you can still, you know, practice maybe lobbying a liberal if you're in it, even if you have a conservative, because it'll be fun. So have fun, and I'll see you in 6 minutes. That's all you have. Okay. So you should be going.